Me and Lila always carved dozens of jack-o'-lanterns every October, so they'd absolutely saturate our lawn on Halloween night. It was our thing, but looking back on it, now that I've lost her, I just feel bad for the pumpkins. I almost relate to them, somehow. The way they were carved up had everything of substance inside of them torn out and left as hollow, rotting shells with forced smiles. Needless to say, I didn't cope with her death well. I didn't want to cope with it. I wanted the world to drown in the black sludge of my grief. I loathed the people I saw going about their lives, unaware that the world had already ended the moment Lila died. The earth shouldn't keep spinning. Life shouldn't go on, not without her. Even my relatives bringing me along on a trip to Kauai only made it worse. The most gorgeous place on earth, and it made me sick with hatred. Nothing that beautiful deserved to exist if Lila wasn't ever going to get to see it. It wasn't fair. I thought I'd never enjoy or care about anything again. Then I discovered media preservation. It started with taking some of Lila's old VHS tapes to a video repair place to fix some issues with the footage before it's digitized. The job fascinated me. In a universe based on entropy, where everything inevitably fades away and is forgotten, restoring something lost is like snatching it from the jaws of death, right? Like flipping the bird to the universe and its so-called natural order. People die, but information doesn't have to. Now, it doesn't matter how small, be it some awful plug-and-play license game or a serial commercial from '80s. It's my mission to recover it in as high a quality as I'm able and make sure it's freely available online for as long as possible. A couple weeks ago, I came across a big haul for boxes of old VHS tapes offered up on eBay for dirt cheap. Most of the tapes were just recordings of Cheers episodes already preserved in higher qualities, but one Maxell E240 caught my interest. First of all, I'd never seen one so melted. Sure, sometimes they were left in an attic too long, and the colors and audio started to degrade. But this one looked like it had survived a house fire. It was covered in soot and the smell of smoke, and had the overall shape of a chocolate bar left out in the sun a little too long. Second was the label, which read in neat Sharpie, for 1,679,329, 8/2035. The casing was so disfigured, I had to bust it apart, just pull out the tapes and res-pull them in a fresh cassette. I tried to iron out the creases in the tape as best I could, but I had no illusions about it accomplishing much. The mylar surface had been irreparably warped in places by whatever fire had half-melted the thing. Imagine my despair at the sight of that dreaded. I could clearly see the tape wasn't blank, yet no amount of adjusting the tracking or trying different TVs or VCRs accomplished anything. Just as I was about to give up, though, the thing just suddenly started playing properly at the exact instant the clock struck 3 a.m., as if it had only now decided to work. My all-nighter had paid off. I didn't dwell on the fact that this miracle fix had been impossible. If I'd had any sense, I'd have torn the horrid thing out of my VCR and buried it beneath holy ground. Instead, fool I sat down and watched. At first, the thing seemed unwatchable. The audio was so distorted that the show's theme song emerged as a low, crackling, staticky wail that made my head throb, and the logo was completely indistinguishable through the flickering and interference. I thought it was a lost cause for a moment, but then a figure appeared and cleared away the static, like Moses parting the Red Sea. It was the sight of the show's host that hooked me. He was just perfect in every way. I knew it just looking at him. Infinitely handsome and likable and charismatic, and he always said the exact perfect thing. The only issue is, I don't remember a single thing about him now, in the same way you can't remember a dream that seemed so clear to you while you were experiencing it. He just appears in my memory as this abstract blur in a sharp suit. Yet at the time, I was awestruck, even before he said a single word. I can't even remember a word he said. It was like he was speaking another language, one I felt as opposed to heard. I'll try and transcribe it as best I can into words, but know that it's only a pathetic imitation. For another night of laughs, prizes, and fun for the whole family, with your host, ########. I noticed that the audio and visual distortion seemed to suddenly intensify the instant he said his name, rendering it completely illegible. Idiot I figured that was a coincidence. Tonight is a night of celebration, folks, because thanks to the support of loyal viewers like you, we have just been approved for, get this, 200,000 more seasons. The live studio audience went wild with applause. I put that in scare quotes because, as far as I could tell, besides the host, the studio seemed completely empty, as if he was standing on a plain white stage that extended outwards in an infinite darkness on all sides. For those just joining us, the game here is simple. He explained that this was some sort of a trivia show. Every time a guest got an answer wrong, it brought them a little closer to some sort of unspecified punishment. And if they got it right, he smirked. Well, they get to delay the inevitable. I wondered what he meant by inevitable. I didn't have to wonder long. The host gestured to a curtain that hadn't been there moments ago, which raised to reveal a middle-aged man. You know the type. Bushy mustache, gray hair, round-rimmed glasses. Kind of guy you'd have doing your plumbing. He couldn't look any more out of place, stood up and restrained in that. What the hell is that? I recognized that metal coffin-looking thing from a medieval torture museum I went to once. The Iron Maiden. The lid hung open, countless long, needle-like blades poking inwards, threatened to poke a million new holes in him if it was shut. His situation was not lost on him. Where am I? What the hell is this? A lucky guess. The host joked. More canned laughter. I know you always loved watching those trivia shows, Malcolm. Weren't you always sitting there, grinding your teeth, seething that it wasn't fair? That you should be the one up on stage, winning big? The man paused. Even he seemed mesmerized by the unreal perfection of the host before him. This is a game show. All you have to do is answer a few questions. Think you can handle that, Malcolm? He pulled out a cue card without waiting for an answer. And our first question: what were you doing the night of February 18th, 1998? The man seemed baffled. Just sat on my couch watching the NFL, I think. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to remember. He let out a startled squeal as a horrid buzzer sounded. On cue, the lid slid a third of the way closed, making him flinch. Oh, I'm afraid that's the wrong answer, Frank. But you know what? I'll give you one more chance. What were you? Following a girl home? The man cried out. F from the bar. There, are you happy? Correct. The canned audience began cheering. Such honesty. Now, our second question. Just what were you carrying while you followed her? Camila was calling. Every cell in my body buzzed with furious anxiety. From where I was standing, I could see her phone, face up and to the left of the sink. A red hubby on the outgoing call screen. Unsure of what other options were available to me, I answered the call. Kim's, is that Dash? Hey, love. Could you kindly pick me up off the floor? And the cheery, sing-song voice that trickled from the speaker was my breaking point. I threw my phone from my hand with all the ferocity I could muster. It crashed against the side of our apartment's oven, its screen becoming black and dead instantly. In the brief silence that followed, a bluish glow caught my attention. Somewhere within Camila's shed exoskeleton, a tiny silver firefly had whirred to life. I cautiously stepped forward, trying to determine where in her mold the light originated. Using a spatula, I pushed a layer of folded abdominal skin out of the way to reveal the source. Her port. As I examined the implant, it blinked 3 times, which was followed by a small droplet of light spinning around its edge. In response, Camila's phone activated once more. It was attempting to connect again with my newly destroyed cell phone. My spine straightened, and my hand involuntarily released the spatula, causing it to clatter against the floor. I digested the nightmarish ordeal with a glacial slowness, observations thawing into realizations only after an excruciatingly long amount of time. Whatever that implant was, it wasn't just a catheter, if it was even a catheter at all. A set of knuckles rapped against the outside of our apartment door. Police. Here to perform a wellness check. Is anyone there? Shouted a gruff male voice. I felt my mind writhe and fracture, practically atomizing under the crushing weight of my current uncertainty and indecision. How can I possibly explain this? Is he going to think I skinned my wife? Am I going to jail? That was quick. Is he actually the police? What if he's someone the port called? Through blistering vertigo, I replied, I'm okay. One moment. Be right there. Finally mobilized by fear, I stood over Camila. It was nearly impossible to tell what parts of her were where in the mess. I wanted to avoid pulling her by her face, but the absurdity of that concern hit me like a freight train on second thought. It didn't matter where I anchored my grasp. I just needed to start pulling. Centering myself with a breath, I bent over and seized a leathery chunk in each hand. Despite being reduced to human taffy, my wife still weighed as much as she did when she was alive. If she was ever truly alive, I thought. Thankfully, her skin slid softly over my kitchen's terrain. I prayed that whoever was on the other side of that door couldn't hear the quiet squishing that I was unfortunately privy to. Piled haphazardly in the darkest corner of the room, I draped a navy blue peacoat over the puddle that used to resemble my wife. I then moved to open the door. The burly man standing on the other side seemed like a police officer. He at least had the uniform. "We got a 911 hang-up from this address not too long ago. Everything all right in there, son?" I tried to adopt a disarming smile, but my facial muscles wouldn't fully cooperate. The expression that resulted did me no favors. A disjointed, schizophrenic smirk manifested above my chin, the corners of my mouth becoming tremulous thorns that refused to act in synchrony. "Yes, I had some chest pains. They're gone now." He scanned me from head to toe, no doubt looking for probable cause. I fought back visions of Camila appearing behind me, dragging herself into view with a deflated hand. After what felt like hours of silent inspection, he spoke again. "Next time, call us back if it turns out you're doing okay." The officer hesitated on how to phrase the end of his sentence. I was in dire straits, and he could tell just by looking at me. Distress, however, was not illegal. I gave him an unconvincing nod, and he walked away. When I could no longer hear the clinking of his gun holster and the dull thuds of his boots against the ground, I locked the door. Resting my forehead against the wood of the frame, I let myself briefly dissociate. Before long, however, anxiety began to bubble at the base of my skull, forcing me to confront reality. With every ounce of my being, I prayed to turn the corner and find no navy blue peacoat cloaking something large and amorphous in my kitchen, which would confirm my developing psychosis. Insanity was preferable to this hellscape. Camila could at least visit me in a sanatorium. Faintly, I could see the outline of that silver firefly under a heap of fabric and skin, and I accepted that I would have no such luck. It took me about 30 minutes to heave Camila into the confines of our walk-in closet. Primarily, I focused my energy on the task at hand, as opposed to theorizing about the meaning of it all. There would be time for that later. Right now, she needed to be hidden from view. Once I had her sequestered, however, I couldn't help but examine Camila. The impossibly surreal nature of her transformation helped me cope with and detach from the circumstances to some degree. This wasn't my wife, the woman I had fallen hopelessly in love with. This was some cruel oddity, an intense and extreme prank. It was Salvador Dali's horrific reinterpretation of Camila, not the flesh and blood woman herself. These thoughts helped, but only to a point. The portion I couldn't reconcile was her face. From where she lay congealed in the back of the closet, the right half of her face was visible. Her features were still taut but slightly withered, like a weathered Halloween mask. The crease at her nose hid the rest of her face from me, existing somewhere deeper inside the pile. Even though it now appeared like a wintry marble stitched into high-quality latex, her right eye seemed to track my movements, watching my every step. I didn't think she was actually watching me. Camila's hollow cadaver had not moved an inch since its deflation. I thought I had killed her. That said, I couldn't absorb her gaze. Even if she was dead, her glassy right eye inspired a skittering, burning madness in my soul that threatened to dissolve me completely if I allowed the flames to rise unabated. I covered her limp, vacant half-face with a t-shirt and resumed my inspection. There were two, for lack of a better word, sacks fixed on the inside of Camila. Circular outlines that clearly had their own internal space. One appeared to be located under her chest, and the second appeared to be located under her upper abdomen. A heart and a stomach, maybe? Next, I ran my fingertips along the length of the right arm. Her shell was sturdy and firm, like thick plastic, save the underside of her wrist, which had more of a silky consistency. Maybe the area served a ventilatory purpose. But then what about the watch? Leaving the closet, I locked the doors behind me and checked the timepiece that was still hanging at the base of the tap. When I placed the obsidian strap up to a light bulb, sure enough, it seemed to be equipped with thousands of tiny holes. Protective, porous metal, I theorized. As I lingered in front of the sink, my detachment from the situation abruptly waned. Standing where she had only a few hours ago, the floodgates' destruction was inevitable. I thought of her laugh, her smile, her empathy and her kindness, causing bitter tears to fall softly into the basin. Then, in a flash, I reconsidered our entire relationship. Was she once human, and then someone replaced her with a near-perfect replica? Was she always like this? What does she want from me? A crack of thunder detonated from somewhere deeper in the apartment. My heart swam, trying to remain afloat in a new deluge of liquid terror. The closet door had slammed against the top of the frame. Initially, I couldn't determine the mechanics of what had transpired and caused the noise. Then I saw it, or rather, I saw her. Under the doorframe, Camila, a sentient lake of skin, was squeezing herself under the closet door. However she was moving, it involved bouts of propulsion that generated enough power to splinter the edges of the resilient wooden door as it collided with its frame. Another 3 booms occurred in rapid succession, and then she was free. Her method of transportation was beyond uncanny. It was mind-shatteringly alien. Camila's gait would start with hundreds of spikes materializing under her, their birth thrusting her tissue upward. She would then hang briefly in the air, giving the appearance of a giant, flesh-toned soccer cleat. The mass of skin would then tilt forward, momentum causing Camila to fall a few inches in her intended direction, reabsorbing the spikes in the process. The cycle would then restart, a full rotation taking only about 3 seconds. Gradually, Camila was hobbling down the hall and towards me. Defeated, my body slumped to the kitchen floor. I leaned against the cabinet below the sink, awaiting whatever was to follow. But Camila passed by me. Her intended destination was apparently the guest bedroom. It did not take her long to get there. From behind where I was sitting, I could hear her ramming against something, repetitive thuds emanating from the room. It took me a while to reconnect my muscles to my nerves, their connections transiently severed by the recent torrent of caustic horror. When I was able, I followed Camila into the guest bedroom. She was struggling to open a drawer present on the bed frame, incapable of melding her flesh around the knob to pull it open. Camila's face wasn't visible from my vantage point, instead submerged somewhere within herself. She could still sense me, however. Her attempt stopped once I entered the room. She tumbled backwards and remained still, wordlessly asking for help. I stepped forward, internally bracing myself for Camila to pounce on and consume me. But she never did. When I pulled the drawer open, I understood. Our air mattress was inside, which included a detachable motor designed to inflate the bed. I haven't managed to reform Camila, not yet, but I'm getting closer. The motor could partially inflate her, but it's not powerful enough to pressurize her completely. I'm desperate for answers, but our communication so far has been limited. She can't speak while she's deflated. It seems like Camila can whisper when she's partially inflated, but only weakly, and I could not hear her over the motor. Her port, whatever it is, can use Camila's phone to call other lines, but it apparently cannot act as a phone by itself. And my phone, unfortunately, remains broken. Maybe I'll try reading her lips later today, or I'll go to a payphone and have her call me there. My planning was interrupted when I felt Camila's phone vibrate in my pocket. It was an incoming call from my mom's number, probably reaching out to my wife after being unable to reach me. Her call was the catalyst to a series of epiphanies. She was the one who introduced me to Camila. I assumed the sacs inside of my wife were a stomach and a heart, but she has no blood, so maybe she doesn't need a heart. Maybe it's a stomach and a uterus. My mom has been obsessed with receiving a grandchild. When I answered the call, I shouted my initial query before she could wind herself up. "Hey, Mom, where did you say you met Camila again?" Dead air came back as her response. Maybe she could hear the motor running in the background, or maybe it was just something in my voice that implied what I knew. Either way, she was stunned. I could hear her breathing on the other line, but seconds later, she still had said nothing. Mom may be a chatterbox, but she's a terrible poker player. She's only truly silent when she's manufacturing a lie.